All right, good morning. We're going to attempt the impossible today. We're going to talk about generational differences and a couple of things as we get going here. One is this is roughly like trying to talk about and explain Russian culture, Chinese culture, and Japanese culture to a crowd full of Russians, Chinese, and Japanese in an hour or 55 minutes now. So if this works at all, it's going to be a marvelous work of God. I'm going to start by introducing myself 3 times. And I'm doing that intentionally. I want you to pay attention to these 3 introductions and just see what you notice. See what's going on in your own heart as I introduce myself, okay? My name's J.D. Whitney, and I come to you this morning from MTI, Mission Training International. I've been in missions for 13 years. Worked for New Mission Systems International in Fort Myers, Florida. I've lived in Kenya, I've lived in China, and done development work in Africa with church planting woven into the fabric of that. Done business work with evangelism and cultural training and all sorts of interesting relational stuff woven in with that. And I've also served in missions leadership. I was actually the interim CEO of my organization for a while and a vice president. And so this morning I'm going to be talking to you about generational differences out of those experiences and out of the multi-generational dynamic of my organizational history. That's number 1. Number 2, my name's JD. I need to tell you this morning that I'm scared to death to enter into this territory. I need to tell you that I do not know it all. I'm still learning a lot about this, and a lot of what I'm going to speak to you this morning is from mistakes that I've made personally, as well as mistakes that I've seen others make. But you'll hear mine some. And I'm a recovering addict. I'm not going to tell you what. I'm an addict of recovering because I'm not going to. And maybe you should listen to me this morning and maybe you shouldn't. That's up for you to decide. My 3rd introduction. Hi everybody, my name's JD. I'm really, really honored to be with you here today. And I just want to tell you that I've really enjoyed getting to know you this last couple of days. I haven't got to know all of you. There's a lot of you I don't know at all. But some of you I've gotten to just catch a glimpse of your story, a glimpse of like that look in your eye. And I'm really fond of you. And I believe that you can do this. What we're going to be talking about this morning, plus the calling that God's put on your life. I believe that you can do it, and I'm for you. All right, that's my introduction. I just want to give one little caveat. And my caveat is this morning you're obviously going to be hearing some from my bias and from my point of view and from my perspective. And tough luck, you're going to have to sort that out. Second thing is that we're going to be talking about generational stuff. I'm not going to connect the dots of language learning for you. I'm not going to go into detail about how this affects your language coaching and a million other things. 1, there's not time. And 2, if you've got this, you can do that. If you don't got this, that's not going to work no matter how much I tell you about it, okay? I just want to give you a brief summary just to begin with. We'll actually do a little visual demonstration here, okay? So if you were born between 1946 and 1964, would you stand up? Everybody say, hi, boomers. Okay, everybody sit down. All right. Now, that might not exactly be true. If you were born before 1946, would you stand up? Let's cheer for these folks. All right. We're not going to focus very much on you guys. But we want to say thank you for going before us. Next, if you were born between 1965 to 1978, these ages, by the way, everybody writes them a little bit differently in the research, so we're kind of ballparking. Later you can say, oh, I stood up in the wrong group. Okay, 65 to 78, would you guys stand up in the room? That's me too, by the way, so you know my bias going forward. Okay, wow. Okay, have a seat. 79 to 92. All right. Great, wonderful. All right, how about anybody after 92? Okay, yeah, there we go. You guys in this room, by the way, just as we go into this conversation today, we're not going to look at past 92 very much, but you may not see them in this room, but I bet you see them in your training. And they're not in the research yet. Uh-oh. Hopefully what we talk about today will help. Okay, I just want to begin. So we got boomers with a big B, we've got X, and I'm just going to put Y, which is another way to call millennials or net generation, Gen Y. Okay, so if you're a boomer, just be quiet for a minute. No, it's hard for you, especially when a teacher's asking a question. Gen X, Gen Y, I want you to kind of shout out maybe one word, maybe two word max. Characteristics, attributes, stereotypes. Okay, we're going to admit that there's stereotypes. Stereotypes of boomers. Gen X, Gen Y, stereotypes of boomers. Let them have it. It's okay. It'll be all right. Policy. Shout them out. Let's go. Let's go. Submission. Work ethic. Company man. Just do it. Okay. That's a good start. We got some good characteristics there. All right, now you Xers, time to be quiet. Boomers, Y generation, millennials. What are some character attributes, some stereotypes, descriptions, one word, two word of Gen X? I'll start you out. Rebellious. Okay. Going on from this. Somebody said something? Individualistic. Okay. Ben? My way or the highway. Ooh, my way. My way is the highway. What are you talking about? What else? I know. Okay. No boxes. I got that same hissing thing going on. I want to get this out of my face. No boxes. All right, let's move to Gen Y, this new generation coming up now into missions and leadership and life. So X and boomers, what are some characteristics here? I can do anything. Okay, hang on. You guys are using 17 words for these guys. 1, 2 words. What else? Constant change. What else? Whining. Wired. Or connected. Okay. Loyal. Okay. We got a lot of stuff going. Can I tell you that this is actually a really common experience? Talking on generations. The generation that we talk about the most is this generation. Did you know that? Generation Y, the millennials. Born 72 up to, or 79 up to early 90s. This is the generation we talk about the most. This is the generation that you hear people always wonder, and we say all kinds of things. You guys, we played the four culture game the other night. And we talked about our reflections and our impressions of these four cultures. And at the end, I said something, and some of you were shocked to see, oh, wow, that's really true. And some of you said, oh, but if I would have had my missions hat on, I wouldn't have done that. What did we do? We made overwhelmingly negative comments about other cultures. But it was just a game. This one's not a game, folks. It's not a game. We're going to come back to that in a minute. So I have something that I want to do right now. We're going to do it really quickly, and I'm sorry, it's not. I was going to try to have everybody play this little game that I've got, but if I had everybody do it, it was going to take up like a half an hour. So it's a really fun game. I need a volunteer right up here in the front, and I need several people thinking I'm going to volunteer on the way back. I need about 6 people, And I'm going to give you can you raise your hands? Like, I need 6 volunteers kind of stretching back through the group. Okay. I got 2 back there, 3, 4. I need 1 more, 2 more up here maybe. 1 more. Okay. Okay. The sentence that goes with this is I see the roof. I want to walk you through, and that's where we're going to end up, okay? We'll actually go backwards. So I see the roof. Here's the picture. Okay, we got a little stick figure kind of face and lines from the eyes pointing at the roof of a house. This is the end. I'm working backwards now. Okay. The sentence that was driving that was keep your eyes on the roof. The picture that drove that. Here we've got a pair of glasses sitting on the roof of a house with little eye pupils in there with an arrow. Sentence looking at the roof of a house. Oh, I must have skipped a step in there somewhere. Got that backwards. So now here I've got a set of eyes. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we're back to that now. So we've got a group of eyes. I skipped one of the written ones. And I've got some arrows from sort of a box, an arrow going up towards the eyes. And the sentence that started it all was, what you see is what you get. It's a little bit abstract. It was a challenging one. Do you see how that morphed as it kind of went through? First it was like there's this conceptual drawing of that turns into like something about seeing, that then it's like, oh, that must be a house, so we got to drag the house into it because we saw that in the picture. And then it's like even the verbiage changed of that. We kind of held along with some same lines there. But there was this transition that happened. What you see is what you get. Another way that I've heard this stated sometimes in a kind of different way of looking at it is your perception is your reality. I want us to think about generations this way. I want to think about it. So here's our boomers, here's our X, and here's our Y. And here is the world that they received, and this is their view of it. Which creates then what? The world that X receives, then they develop their view of it, which creates the world that Y receives, which creates their view of it. Another way to describe this are for those 2 columns, it's a little less punny and clever, but the experience and the response. This is my experience, then this is my response. So can you guys briefly right now, again, just if you were born in this boomer era, what are some of the things that were going on in the world at that time? What were some of your realities? Cold War? Vietnam? Assassinations. Drugs. Okay, turmoil. Okay, I'm going to stop you. Yep. There's a million great things that you guys are talking about. Can I notice, first off, that every single thing that you mentioned was socio-political? Have you noticed that? The Jesus movement, also socio-political. It's a social level thing. You experienced it as a person, so there's a personal dynamic to these things, but these are all what? Movements. They're massive cataclysmic events. One thing that you guys didn't mention, but I think it's really important, global dominance in the United States. We're talking, by the way, we're starting today in the U.S. We're going to bring some other parts of the world stuff into this today, but we're really going to sit a lot on this because this is where most of us live in this dynamic. But a lot of the things that we're doing, you can apply them outside of the United States. We will point to that, okay? And we will even touch it. Global dominance. Your companies, your organizations, prior to World War II were this big. And over the 30, 40, 50 years that followed, they became this big. And this was your birth into work and organizations. Was this. Interesting. Okay. So what do you think that some of the views would be that come out of this world? What's the response? Sense of responsibility? Okay. What else? Unsettled. If I was settled, though, what would I be settled in? Institution. What else? Right.
Is this anybody answering or just the boomer?
No, anybody. Hard work being rewarded.
I think it also, an us, them.
Us, them with who?
Well,
Or
it depends on where you are.
Cold War, Vietnam. Yeah.
This movement is
Okay.
us and the people who aren't in it are the them.
Yeah, we got hard work is there for sure. Us and them, so even us and them between like hippies and non-hippies, right? I know that I come from hippie land, and so we still got them. They're still there. They haven't changed much. But there's a tension there between people who lived that and people who didn't live that, for sure. I need to move on because of time, but this would be really interesting to keep delving into this. What was the world that you experienced, and how did you respond to that? Now, I want you to really look at this. Some of these dynamics here, you got institution, hard work, responsibility. There's an unsettledness that's happening in the boomers. There's an us and them mentality. These things have happened in the world. But then what's the world that Gen X receives? Okay. Who's saying we don't know, we don't care? Is that the world they received, or is that their response? Okay, so I'm going to take that back out of there. We'll get to that in a minute. What's the world they received? Polluted? Okay. What else? Unsettled. Conflict. Rise of capitalism. I want to unpack that a little bit for you guys. Rise of capitalism. This institutional thing, this global dominance, actually built a very established structure. Where were the established structures? In the institutions. What was simultaneously happening for Gen X? 50% divorce rate. So, in the midst of this, Gen X was the first generation to experience as children the 50% divorce rates. Boomers were experiencing 50% divorce as adults. Gen X is experiencing it as children. This is huge. Yes? Latchkey kids.
But I think that it goes back to the capitalism too. It's like everybody was working.
Yeah, exactly. So you got the capitalism, everybody's working. You've got the latchkey experience. You've got the single mom experience. But I think it's easy to say, like, wow, the disintegration here is in the broken family, but totally missing. And this is where we as Christians need to think 700 times. That's how my kids do numbers. They just add ones that sound big to each other. This generation experienced the absence of dad in pursuit of God's work. And they felt it. Bigger is better is what was going on around them. In the macro, okay. Sorry. Devaluation of life. Okay. Life down. Maybe. That was what was happening. Okay. Now what's their response? Rebellion. Disillusionment. Entitled to what? Okay, entitled to more But all the things you mentioned were externals. So I'm going to actually leave that there because I think you're right. What else? Resignation.
Unsurety of relationship.
Yeah, and can I say insecure? Is that okay?
Fear of commitment.
Yeah. In relationship, fear of commitment.
Yeah, maybe committed to what they believe rather than the company.
Okay. Committed to what they believe rather than to the company or the organization. We're definitely going to get there in more detail. What's the world then that Gen Y received? Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. That's a huge part of it. What else is part of the world that they received? 9/11. Okay. Interconnection. Well, I'm just going to say internet, and that will serve for interconnection even. Can I just draw out here, one of the things that has been written about and is in the research is that these guys did not experience the family directly in a different way than Gen X. Divorce rate's the same. The family dynamics have lasted. They're the same here. And in fact, you see that the year frames for these are tighter. And so the breadth of this is impacting both of these. Also, the numbers of boomers is impacting both of these. But one of the things in the research about Generation Y is that as opposed to Generation X, who'd experienced the disintegration of the family in a vacuum, when I was in elementary school, if a kid's family got divorced, it was like, oh. The very same that it was in the boomers when the divorce rate was way, way lower, and the busters when it was way, way lower. By Gen Y, we had youth groups. We had counselors. We had support networks. We had recovery groups and recovery ministries. And so now all of a sudden you end up with actual services to help these kids, but they're not in the family. They're out and around in the community. So there are some support networks for these guys that weren't there before. All right, now what are some of the views then that come out of these dynamics? Oh, and the decreasing dominance. So I'm going to say U.S., and I'm just going to put an arrow down because the dominance and the assumed eternal dominance of the United States, which was going here, is not here anymore. Okay, so this is part of what they've experienced growing up. So what are some of the views then that they would have? And Gen Yers, please feel free to shout out. I know you don't want to.
Really disclose it. Like they
Okay.
share a lot.
Okay, they disclose a lot.
Search of relevance.
Okay, a search for relevance. What else maybe would come out of this? Okay, friends closer than family. Yeah, that's actually a great way to put it. Tribe. I'm going to put one up here, and I'm going to maybe draw across the line. I'm gonna write a word, and if you're Gen Y or millennial out here, I do love you and I do believe in you. So I'm going to write this. Okay. But it does relate to what's in the research. I'm going to put the word coddled. And that's a really negative way to describe it. Another way would be to describe it with this support that's there. But there's this we've totally screwed up our universe, and now we've got to take care of these little egglings. And so there is very much a dynamic of this, and it's playing out in some really interesting ways. We're afraid to tell you coddled and say it in the room because we're afraid that you'll be unhappy. What does that say about how we are impacting you, how we're choosing to impact you, and how you guys are choosing to respond to what's there? There's an interesting dynamic going on there. So I'm just going to put it there. I hope that you trust and believe me that I do love you, and I believe that this generation is going to be one of the greatest generations in the world, probably. Yeah. So they may be coddled, but they really hate to be patronized. Yes. Very true. Okay, so we got to move on. What we're going to do today, because I cannot handle all of the discussion that this is going to create in you is I want you to get in your little groups of 3 and say whatever you like. But the way that I want to deal with that is what I really would like you guys to focus on right now is like as we've gotten this far, what is kind of like twang or bing or in your head or your heart, okay? So kind of go with like what's kind of disturbed you about how far we've gotten so far, or what has really super resonated with your heart. That's kind of where we're going to go with our discussions. I want to stick with that for a reason today, rather than the research really says, or can we go with what's going on in your heart, what the clangs are, or what the resonation is, okay? Groups of 2 or 3, 4, and just discuss for about 1 minute, 2 minutes. So you got to be brief, concise. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop you there. I'm going to stop you there. I know you got lots more to go with. I hope this will permeate some of your conversations between now and tomorrow. What I want to do is I want to actually just draw your attention to one thing here that I drew out on the boomer side of saying, like, look, this stuff all over here was socio-political. You guys were looking at the big, massive picture. In fact, as we talk about these stereotypes, you boomers are terribly comfortable with that. It's like, finally, somebody's explained to me Gen X and Gen Y. But if you look at the experience that these guys are having, we might have put coddled up over here, but one of the dominant experiences of Gen Y is chaos. This is fragmentation of everything known. We don't even score them on math anymore, hardly. It's like even math isn't math anymore. What in the world am I supposed to go with? And how could you possibly stereotype a group of people where nothing is certain? And so now we move into this really personal experience of the universe as opposed to this socio-political. These people are processing things in a really, really different way. So I just wanted to comment on that. Now what we did here is we looked at world view, and then that creates another world, which creates another view, which creates another world, creates another view. Another thing to comment is that a lot of times we look at societies. The Wall Street Journal made this mistake with an article they recently wrote. Dwight gave it to me. And it was talking about 10 things your kids won't tell you, and one of them is, we're not going to give you grandchildren. The reason why they said it was because we are having less kids. And so they're telling me as a parent that my kids are going to have even less kids. Is that right? No, because the world we create impacts their world. And sometimes we go, yes, we're going to take it and run with it. And sometimes we say, ew, I don't want that. I want 7 kids. And in fact, I'm hearing a lot of that nowadays that I didn't hear 10 or 20 years ago. So just be aware of saying, like, there's a trend line going this way and it must go that way forever, right? Like housing prices. Okay. Now I want you just quickly to flip your brain. This is your one chance to think outside of the United States for a second. I want you to think about how this, not these specific details, some of these realities will be true across the world. So, for instance, some countries did really experience this kind of X-ish experience of the disintegration of the family, and that was a dominant feature. Some countries like Kenya are experiencing this technological revolution where now kids are growing up with telephones. They never even knew what a telephone was, and now they're jumping straight into this thing. So the generational shifts are different, but again, it's the world we receive creates a view and a response, which creates the world that's received. Maybe just take a couple minutes in your groups and say, like, oh yeah, in my country or the area of my interest, here's one of the things that's happening and how it's shaping or how it might be shaping, or I wonder what this is doing, okay? All right, I'm going to pull you back up here now. We're going to keep doing this throughout the rest of our time, but I'm going to throw a lot more stuff at you to talk about. So these conversations are going to have to continue later if they're going to continue, and I hope that they will. I hope this will be something that kind of piques your radar to a different aspect of life. I want to talk for a minute about motivation. And this, I think, is going to have some significant repercussions for you guys' endeavors and missions with your organizations, with language learning, and how to deal with students in this. But I just wanted to draw a couple of, again, big generalizations. I've got pluses and minuses up here, but I would really think of these almost as like stoplights. I wrote them on my notes as a big red and a big green. So if you want to stop somebody in their tracks, here might be a way to do it. So a big green in motivation for boomers might be achievement. What do you think? Achievement? Money, power, success. But success takes on this connotation, achievement. There's a structural dynamic around this achievement. If it's like, man, give me an A, I want an A. Or, man, give me a promotion, I want a promotion. These things motivate boomers. This is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing, okay? Not bad. Not putting it as bad. I'm not down on boomers, okay? If you want to work with boomers, you need to understand that this is part of what's in there, right? How do we deal with this? How do we motivate people through this? If we're deconstructing everything that we've done for the last 50, 100 years to work with these new generations, we're just deconstructing it all, but we've got boomers in our organization? Ouch. Bad idea. The answer is unfortunately far more complex than that, okay? A demotivator, I would say, this is something that I've observed, is uselessness or futility. That if there's not output, if I am not being used, it's like the worst thing for a boomer most of the time. For Gen X, Gen X is a weird one here, so I'm going to write these and then I'm going to mess with your mind for a second. Validation. What I mean by validation, let me explain this to you. What I mean by this. Validation could mean, and it is sometimes meant by Gen Xers, I just want you to tell me that I'm right. Like, just admit, why don't you, that I'm right. And a lot of times they might be right. Dad, you were not there. My dad was there. I want to tell you that. And maybe I'll get a chance to tell you a minor story about how my heroes are my dad and my grandpa's, which is really special. But the dad, you were not there. Like, we started feeling that when we were 5. We grew up feeling that. Trying to say it, trying to communicate. You know, the thing we stole out of the grocery store was to say, like, Dad, hello. Okay? And Dad wasn't there. We didn't get to say it. And nobody ever came along and said, you know, it kind of makes sense that you're functioning the way that you're functioning. Because that doesn't excuse. I'm not saying this in a way to excuse. But to recognize that it's possible that Gen Xers are acting in a way that is rational based on their experience of the world. That they're actually functioning rationally in the same way that boomers and Gen Y are functioning rationally based on the world as they received it. As a demotivator, I'm going to say betrayal. Betrayal. This is that feeling of the family breaking down. How could you, Dad? How could you, Mom? Runs deep in us. It runs deep in us. And when it happens, man, we're ready with the response because we had to develop that response when we were really little without any help. It's not a good response. The weird thing about Gen X is that this one is actually a paradox. Sometimes the most motivating thing you can do to a Gen Xer is to say, you can't do it. Try it on me. I'll prove you wrong. And my motivation will not be to achieve something great. It'll be to prove you wrong and achieve something great to prove you wrong. It's part of the thing. I want to stick my thumb in your eye because you think I can't do it. Okay? This is true. I'm going pretty negative on this. Like, there's some very negative dynamics. This is my generation. I'm being hard on myself and my generation, okay? But I think there's some power here as well. In millennials, connectedness. If there's no connection, what's the point? And a negative meaninglessness. If it doesn't have a point, if there's no meaning behind it, why would I do it? Take out the trash. Why? Because it's going to create a smell. Okay, do I really have to? I'm trying to solve poverty in Africa. Get off my back. There's this deep desire for meaning, and that's really a great thing. Yeah.
On the validation in Gen X,
Yeah.
another big thing, well, maybe it's just me personally, but it's a validation of me relationally, not just a validation of my thoughts about something, but that you're validating the relationship.
Can I actually take it a step deeper? I want to take it a step deeper. Not just validating what I think about something, not just validating our relationship, validating my existence on this planet. There's an intense feeling among Gen X, and there's some very, very tangible realities surrounding it. And one of the names for Gen X is the forgotten generation, the missing generation. We're not missing, we're here. There's lots of us. Try and find us. Yeah, and it's wanting to hear that value from outside. So I'm going to stop there, and what I'm going to say is, okay, here's these things, and how is this going to shake up your thoughts of how to motivate language learners or the people that you work with or your son or daughter or mom or dad? How does this shake up your view of motivation in the universe? Okay, go. All right, I'm going to pull you back, and we're going to move to the next next ramification of this. I hope these discussions are being challenging each other, kind of given a chance to get that thought out there. Hopefully that also help you remember what you're thinking during all this, because we're moving over so much territory, so I apologize for that. I want to go next to view of organizations and what makes an organization an organization. Okay, if I can describe it that way. I'm going to put here in the boomer group growth or productivity as a green thing, like it's a good organization if growing, producing, output, tangibles, measurability, okay? These things resonate in management circles and missions. Some of you guys are pretty close to the top of your organizations. I've heard the guys who are at the top of the organizations, measurability, 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 measurability. And they're all boomers. Or older. Yep. Okay, negative would be actually low productivity, or it's just the opposite, low tangibles. Like if those things are going down, if they're not growing, if the numbers are down, that's like this is a weaker organization. Okay? I want to move to Gen X. This one's really hard to describe, but I chose 3 words: honest, ugly, beautiful. For X. Did you notice in my introduction, my first introduction, what did I do? I gave you my resume in a nutshell. That was my why you should listen to me, because of who I've been, where I've been, my experience qualifies me to speak to you. In my second one, what did I do? I apologized. I was dangerously and uncomfortably transparent for many of you. I said I was an addict, a recovering addict. That's an important distinction for me personally. But in Gen X, if I had just said that I was an addict, that would not have disqualified me. It wouldn't have, because I can handle ugly, honest. Honesty, as a friend of mine says, is a two-edged sword. You can use it to build somebody up, or or build a house or something. You use it to chop somebody to death. We're very, very comfortable with that reality, and comfortable using honesty in a negative way. But it's also like that's a buy-in in a Gen X group. If I'm not, authenticity is like a big word that runs around, or vulnerability, transparent, these kind of words. So if I talk to you about how I've made a mistake, about how I'm weak, how I'm broken, we resonate with that. Why do we resonate with that? Because when we were 5, weak, broken, we have experienced being the whipping boy for a generation of the triumph of capitalism and all things good in organizations and structures. We experienced the boot kick. Okay? If you wonder why in the church today, you find young people like resonating with homosexuality and with homosexuality in the church, they may or they may not. I got to tell you, like for me, I read the Bible and I see things as pretty clear about what God thinks about that practice. But when I see the church being like, what do I feel? Ouch! I feel the pain of me and my friends as little kids wondering where our daddies are. and being down. We know what it is to be down. We know what it is to be ignored, passed over. We know these things. And so when we see that happening somewhere else in the world, that resonates with us. This is there's huge motivational potential there, right? What about these people of Africa that nobody ever listens to? Gen Xers would be like, listen to them, listen to them, listen to them. In spite of our own pridefulness in all of this, like we're really ready for them to be heard too. We want to be heard. We want them to be heard. Negative would be bureaucracy. We just don't like it. And we see it at the roots of all the things that ignored us. Millennials. Okay, I know I'm making broad generalizations here. I hear some rumbling in the room. Okay. Millennials, organizations are for parents. Organizations are for parents. They're for parents. Let me explain that, unpack that. I can tell some people don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. If I'm Y, sorry, we're going across now. I just left these things up here because I want us to keep that mindset as well. For Gen Y, again, we said in our breakdown, like they had this breakdown of family, so friends are closer than parents. I'm looking at other places. I'm grabbing this from other things. I'm looking for that connection. And frankly, yeah, they're all over Facebook, but guess who's the biggest growing group in Facebook? Elderly. Yes. Fastest growing group using social media. Gen Y, when you look at their technology use, they don't actually do things like check their bank balance. Did you know that? They don't. They don't do that. They don't use the internet for that. They might do it, but they don't use the internet for that. They use the internet for connection. They're looking for connection, and they're particularly in need of and responding to and craving parentalism, family. Organization is family. It is too for us in Gen X, but we're a little bit more rebellious about it. But these guys are totally open to an organization that isn't a family thing, and they'll follow you even if they don't agree with everything because they just want that value of having a parent that cares. Okay? They respond. I've seen amazing things. People that, we didn't say it, but a lot of people will say Gen Ys are lazy, that millennials are lazy. I've seen the exact opposite. But I've seen the exact opposite when they're loved and cared for, when they have figures that they can look up to in their parents' generation, whether it's their parents or somebody else. If they have that, man, whoosh! Don't you think they're going to change the world if they have the parents to lean on? A total negative is just a job. They will leave your organization faster than you can do this. If it's just a job and just convenience, they're gone. Not necessarily gone if they don't have anything else out there, but if they find anything with a sniff of this, they're gone. You want to recruit today? Be a parent to a 23-year-old. They will follow you anywhere, and there's millions of them. They'll go anywhere with you. Okay? So I want you to take a second and discuss that. Can I just ask before we do that, is it okay if I go because I got started a little bit late, is it okay if I go 5 minutes over? Okay, please be really pungent and brief in your talk now because we have a few more things to cover. Okay, so I want to move on to the area of loyalty. When you're talking about retention, you're talking about hanging on to people, turnover, missionary attrition, etc. This is a really core concept, core idea. Over here, we're talking about how do we get them to actually work hard. You can get any human being can work hard, but what motivates us to do that is different. How do you create an organizational structure in which they function effectively and comfortably? That's important because that can create a grind against whatever, even if the motivation's there, it can create this grinding, oh my goodness, but I have to fill out another form. That doesn't mean anything. So you get that effect. You can hear my Xmas coming out here. But now I want to move to loyalty. What gets them to stick? How do we get people to stick? And the easy one, because it's what is extant in the world, is structures. especially if it, like we talked about over here, it's a structure that achieves, it's a structure that has output, it feels like a world beater. Man, you can get a boomer to stick to that. For sure. I'm a part of something bigger than myself. Isn't that great? To find people who crave to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Isn't that beautiful? That's beautiful. Right? Boomers, you can shake your heads. Yes, it's a beautiful thing. Man, wonderful thing. Okay, the structure helps you guys stick. It does not help us stick. What a Gen Xer will stick to is me. Not me personally. Me. I stick to me, and I stick to my ideals. This is an effect of that relational shattering that we experience as children. Again, boomers experience that as adults, which is part of why they cling to organization and structure, right? That helps alleviate that. But as kids, we hit that and boom. And we didn't have structures to cling to. Elementary school doesn't last forever. You cannot stay there. So what do you have to stick to? Your ideals, your thoughts about how the world should be. And so we have stuck those, front, core, and center of what's important. I'm not saying that Gen X does not need relationships, that they don't crave parenting. There's a lot of that underneath. But on the surface, me and my ideals is what's gonna stick me and what's gonna drive me. This creates an instant conflict. Instant. Okay? And with Gen Y, deep relationships tend to be the thing that keep people. I've got a friend, and through from an internship, through a couple of jobs, through a series of for a time of not having a job, this guy calls me up or emails me every once in a while and just says like, hey, I need somebody I can talk to deep. He doesn't say it that way, but that's what he wants to do. I've got something I want to run by you. And he's not saying, should I go here or should I go there? He's like, oh, my heart's just feeling like this, and this is what's going on inside of me. And what do you think? Am I crazy? Like, what should I do? But I'd really mostly just want you to listen to me. But yeah, I do want your advice. He's actually willing to listen to me, not because I think he sees me as a father exactly, but maybe an older brother. And so I have to be really careful about this, because I, as an Xer, could just be like, go there, do this. This is my dream and my ideal, right? And boomers would be like, okay, come on into this structure. It'll work for you, I promise. And he's like, no. There's a deep relationship there that they crave. I want to talk about this conflict that's right here, because what's happening in the world today, because boomers are living longer, and because they've built these world-beating organizations, they are hanging on to these world-beating organizations longer and longer. By the time many of you are my age, your parents were dying. My grandparents are dying. And they're still doing amazing stuff, which I love. Isn't that cool? At the same time, we're like junior manager at the farthest outpost of the universe who nobody listens to because I'm just a kid at 37 or 52. How far up do we go? Yeah, pretty far. About 40, 50, 48, 50, somewhere there. Yeah, just a kid. And what's happening then is that boomers are starting to notice, wow, we've got to look to pass things on. But what have Xers done? They've left the building. Because we didn't need you. We've learned how to live without you. So we went and started our own thing. We started 500 million missions organizations over the last 10 years. Right? And where are they? Are they here? Uh-oh. Problem. Okay, they're not here. These structures have the greatest amount of wealth. This generation has the greatest amount of wealth that the world's ever known. These religious structures, these ministry structures, have the greatest amount of land, money, resources, connections that the world has ever known. And what's going to happen to them is, like somebody tripping with a wedding cake. Because these guys have all left the building, and we're having to oh, look, there's some cake on the floor. Let me pick that up and figure out if I can make something out of it. There's not a handoff happening here. And it is not all boomers' fault. We Gen Xers can be really rebellious and stinkers. and independent and run off and do our own thing. I'll come back to that. One of the things that is happening is that those structures are being passed by us to millennials and Generation Y, who may or may not be ready for that. And they're taking it because they're like, okay, Dad, okay, Dad, okay, Dad, and I want to do something meaningful. But have we really prepared them to hold that? I don't think that we have. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it, and I'm not saying that Gen X should hold on to this either until we're 95, because we shouldn't. But how do we prepare these guys to do what we're going to be asking them to do very, very, very soon? I would love to have you discuss that one in more detail, but I don't have time. I'm going to finish with a couple of just my comments for you. Boomers, your gut reaction of this is going to be great. Somebody has now explained the fullness of this to me. I've got a chart. There's a structure. I know what to do. The truth is, you cannot do that with this. Please, please do not do that with this. We will smell it. I'm not kidding. I had a guy talking about people one time, and he's like, I have a thing in my drawer. This is how I manage people. This is my strategy for people. Got a thing in my drawer. It's got a list of all my employees and whether they're a bear, a lion, or this or that. And I got a little summary of how to respond to those people. And so when they come into my office, I pull open my drawer before they come in so I know how to treat them when they come in the room. We can smell it. We can smell it. But I want to tell you that we need you. We need you. We need the wisdom that you have. We need the things that have happened in your hearts. But we need you to dig past even the structures and the mental stuff in your own mind, reach into your heart and connect with us on a deep level. Share your hurts and pains. Move into that vulnerability space with us. We need that. Value us. We need it. We will respond, I promise. Please do. For the Gen Xers in the room, believe in boomers again. Believe in them again. Give them a chance. Give them some really high expectations. Stay in their face with that honest and ugly stuff. Just be like, you really let me down there, but I'm expecting you to do better tomorrow. I'll be back. They're going to respond to that. Seek wisdom in your elders. Learn to follow. How are you going to expect Y to follow if you don't learn to follow? How are you going to expect somebody to follow Christ if you don't follow? Learn to follow. Prove worthy of the handoff. Not robbers and rebels, grabbing and seizing power. Let's be patient and take it when they're ready. But let's prove worthy of that. Millennials, follow people worth following. A model that I found useful in my life as I've explored finding additional parents to my own wonderful parents is to say, wow, I want to be about 75% like that guy. Don't worry about trying to find the person who's 100%. You can filter out the stuff that you don't like about somebody or that you see that's not Christ-like. But man, if you find somebody 70, 80%, follow them. Follow that 70 or 80%. And maybe you find somebody 20% over here that's the other part that you're really missing, or 5 or 6 people at 40 or 50% that can be people that you can run after. But follow them. Some hard things are worth doing. Find meaning and romance in the simple, mundane things of life. I think romance, as somebody who's been married about 9 years and has 4 kids, you want to know what I think romance is? I think it's doing the dishes and changing diapers. I think that's real romance, and I hope that millennials will learn that. That it's not all in the flash and the bang. To all of you at MTI, we talk about 3 things. I'm just going to say them out to you. They're so simple, I know that you're going to get them. Search me, Lord. Start there. Search me, Lord. Exit and enter. Exit your world and move into the world of somebody from another generation. Just like you cross cultures, you exit the U.S. and you enter into China or Africa or wherever. And third thing, Father, help. You will not be able to do this on your own. Father, help. And take comfort in the fact that the beautiful thing about our Father is that when he calls us to something, it's good for us too. When we do something good for another person, it's good for us. Steve talked this morning about your story, that God cares about your story, and he does care about your story. And today, as much as any time in history, your story is critical to your relationships with people of other generations. I hope you'll take the time to be that incarnational father who comes down and reaches into the world of another person and says, I want to hear your story. Let's pray. Father, I pray that you will help us, that you will search us, that you will help us move from our point of default with all the pluses and minuses that come with that and move into the world of the people around us. God, help us not to systematize any of us from any generation or these stereotypes and say, well, I get that person because I heard that in a seminar. But that this would open our minds to think beyond, to really see these as cultural lines that we're crossing, and to do it with courage and grace. Thank you for the people in this room who have gone before and led the way. And I pray that those of us who are younger would be worthy followers of them in their footsteps as they follow Christ. In Jesus' name, amen.